We now go to what I consider, and many consider, one of the most important chapters in any sefer. One of the most important chapters in any sefer. The first parak of the Heilige Mesilas Yesharim. Parak Aleph. The Be'er Klal Chovas Adam Olamo. The obligation of a man in his world. We begin. Yesod HaChasidus. The Shorish HaVoda Tmimahu. The foundation of Chasidut. Let's call that higher level of Avoda. The Shorish and the root of Avoda Tmimahu. What is it? Shidbarer V'yitamed Eitz Adam. Has to be clear and true by a person. Ma Chovaso Bolamo. What is the obligation in the world? Ulomatzar Shiasim Mabato Magamato. What does he have to pay? His mind space, his perception, where he's going. Wow. Friends, it used to be people memorize things. Winston Churchill could, for hours, say over things, Balpeh, Lomi Boy, Torah scholars, Lahavdil, etc. We live in a generation where the whole idea of memorization has fallen a lot. And there are good reasons for it and bad reasons for that. Rav Dessler writes that we're a door of Havana. We try to understand things in a depth today, and we don't necessarily have the mind, things like that. Okay, you have the Silverin kids who are memorizing Mishnayos. Everybody's impressed with them. Incredible. This is a line you have to memorize. This is a line you have to memorize. I'm not sure if there's any other words. I think there's a Rashi in Chumash, which I say it often about. But this is a line which I always tell people, myself, you have to memorize. Yisod HaChasidus. The Shorish Havoda Tmimu Shidbari Dami Tomacha V'Sabalom Matzar Shasim Agodom Adho B'Chol Hashem Kol Yimei Chayv. You got to know it because this is a life-changing line, So let's do it. Yisod HaChasidus V'Shorish. The word Yisod and Shorish are very similar. Foundation and Shorish, right? They both imply like the lower koma of something, the beginning of something. They're both foundational words. What's the difference between them? The very basic difference. Yisod, right? A foundation is set, but it doesn't change, right? It doesn't give life. It doesn't continue to give life. A shorish, a root, is something which keeps pumping life into the thing that's there. And there are two things. There's Yisod, but the shorish is maybe not as set as the Yisod. Now, I want to just emphasize how strong Yisod is. I used to love to give this mashal when I was a Rebbe and Hanhala member of Eshet Torah. And as many of you know, maybe all of you know, and Aish has this amazing building, new building. Anybody at the cult that just turns around, you can't miss it. 5 floors, 6 floors. Who knows how much it's worth today? Maybe I think it was $16, $17 million to build. I'm sure it's worth about 25, 30 today. Phenomenal building. Many mitzvahs are done there. And I used to say, what's the most important part of this building? Is it the chandeliers? They have a chihuli there, which is worth $70,000. Beautiful glasswork from a Seattle glassblower person. I don't know if there's a title to that. They had fancy chandeliers in the ballroom, the Golden Ballroom from Italy. They had special wood. You know what the most important part of the building is? Part we don't see. The foundation. Deep down. And we don't see it. If the chihuli gets broken, you can replace it. It'll be expensive, you can replace it. You can fix one of the glass pieces, another one of the glass pieces. A chandelier breaks, you change it. It'll be expensive, $50,000, $20,000, $30,000. If the yesod, if there are foundational problems in the building, you got to get a new building. But no one sees it. That's it. You know, that's why a person always has to think about what their foundations are. What are their foundations in midos? What are their foundations in emunas, in deis, how you see things, right? You see, I'll give a strong and wonderful and terrifying example of that. You see sometimes people are so talented and have so much going for them, but they have a low self-image and they don't go forward in life in a certain way. And that's because there's something wrong. That basic confidence that a person should have from his children, one of the most important things that a parent, secular, Jewish, non-Jewish, can give a child. Of course, talking the normal situation of Jewish parents, but not just, right, is a yesod of a good self-image. You're a worthy person. You're worthy. You're etzem worthy. You don't have to prove yourself. Who you are is fine. But when that yesod is off, it can be 50 years later, And there's still that immaturity, there's still that having to prove themselves, there's still that lack of confidence, there's still that not going forward, because there's a problem in the Yisod. So the Yisod of Hasidus, and the Shorish of it all, those two powerful words, Shit Ba'er, Barer, V'yit Ba'meit. Those are very similar words. Burer of emes, what's the difference? So we can explain it like this. There's clarity on an idea, and there's a sense that it's true. Let's say someone who you really, really are somech on tells you something. Your Rebbe, your Rav, your Rebbitzin, a person who've impeccable character, and like we use the expression, I trust you implicitly. A person you trust implicitly, they tell you, this is how it is, X thing. Say, I believe them. But the idea that they were saying was not clear to me. I don't know why it's true. I don't know exactly what it means. I get a little bit. It's not Chinese. If it's Chinese, it's not. It's emes, but it's not borer. And then there's a brirus you can have, something be clear to you, but you think it's wrong, right? Those who learn b'chavrusa, your chavrusa says something to you, teaches you pshat, explains an idea to you, and you say, I think I know exactly what you mean, but I think you're exactly wrong, right? I don't believe what you said. So that's example of birur and emes. The brirus means I see it. I see it clearly in full technicolor. It stands out. It's as if I used to have my glasses weren't working, now my glasses are working. I understand the idea concept exactly. That's borer, but it's not true. And then there's emes. So those two terms work beautifully together. Yisod, Meshorish, birur, emes. Birur, Yidbayer, it has to be super clear what I'm about to say. And it has to be emes. You have to recognize it's the truth. And what is it? What is your obligation in this world? Whoa. Obligation in this world. So now this is such an important idea for us to remember it to ourselves today. In a time when we don't like the word, right? When I say we, I mean the world around us and us affected by the world around us. The idea of obligation becomes less and less popular. It feels right. In Hebrew we say a lot, ani mitchaber, ani lo mitchaber lezeh, ani lo mitchaber, ani mitchaber, ani ohev. Right? The idea of being a servant to someone else. You say like, Eliezer wasn't a servant to Avram. Eliezer was an executive director of Avram Avinu Enterprises. He wasn't a servant. He didn't have an obligation. No. Ani chayav. The yisod v'shorish of a person, yisod v'shorish of what is Hashem, is the sense obligation. Without a sense of obligation, you don't know where someone's going to end up. There's such an important idea we need to give a mashal, we need to give a parallel. Imagine a marriage, and the chassan and the kala, the bride and the groom, are there, and the kala turns to the chassan, and he says, will you be neman to me? Will you be faithful to me? Right? Can I trust you? And he says, well, we'll see how it feels. Hopefully. Now, I hope so. Hopefully. Meaning, if I don't look beautiful in the morning for a month or so, I have a hard time. Maybe you won't be faithful to me. Well, that's not marriage. That's not marriage. But it's about love. It's about having a good time with each other. It's about great conversation. Starched shirts, flowers, roses, wedding presents. No. There has to be a sense of obligation. I'm obligated to you. A parent, a good parent. Of course we get nachas from our children. Of course we enjoy them. Of course we appreciate them. Of course there's no thing we'd rather do than be with our kids. But it's obligation also, man. I have to do for these people. I have to get up in the middle of the night for them if they need me. I have a relative, Tzila, I won't say her last name in this context, but she had a daughter that was extremely disabled. And there was a question going to Hungary, I think, maybe for 6 months, or I don't remember exactly. This is years ago before I wasn't even in the family. It's from my wife's relative. And Maran Rav Shach, the great Rosh Yeshiva and leader of the Torah world in Eretz Yisrael for decades, told them, you have to go. But what about the other children? You're obligated to this child. And she went for a very long time, a few months, I believe. It was to Hungary, something like that. It wasn't fun. It wasn't enjoyable. They lived in a very, very frum area, very supportive area, wonderful area. Now, to go live in Hungary? This is before people went to Hungary. This is 40 years ago or so. Obligation. That's what it is to be a parent. Chavasel. A person has to live with a sense of obligation. We have to, as much as this is Yisod V'Shorish, what we're about to continue with, we have to chazik ourselves in this idea of obligation. I don't care that the world is not into obligation. I don't care that the world only wants it to feel good all the time. I don't care that the world is all about just chibur and connection and this, and even in the religious world, and those words are good words in the proper context, but they can't limit us. I look for Tom, I look for pleasure, I look for all these things, but at the end of the day, it's chovaso. Ma chovaso bolamo. Where's my obligation? Now, there's another diak here, which I think Rav Olba made, which is a beautiful diak. It's chovaso, it's a personal chova, and it's bolamo. It's in his world. His world. Each of our worlds mean our life situations. Our worlds mean our talents, our abilities, our chesronis, our difficulties, our challenges. That's all olamo. Our family, the types of wives we marry, the types of husbands we have, the types of children we have, the types of parnas we have, the types of talmidim we have, the types of yeshivas we have, the types of communities we're part of, our minyanim. That's olamo. And each of us has a different chova, lefi their olam. Ma chova, so what's his chova? In ba'olam, not just ba'olam, instead of ba'olamo, in his world, her world. What is your specific obligation? And we all know that, right? Like I said before, my dear relative, her whole world was rocked, and her husband's world was rocked. There's a different chova, right? I, Baruch Hashem, never had that type of chova, but now I have this type of chova that someone else doesn't have, and I can play violin. That's part of olamo. I can't. For those who want to know, I don't know how to play any instruments. I never did. Maybe clarinet a little bit. I mean, not even that, right? Zero. I fooled around a little bit, maybe a little bit, but very, very, very little bit. That's not olamo, but there are other people. That's olam. That's your world. You're funny, you're attractive, you have charisma, you're articulate, you're good at making money, you're good at organizing things, you're good at fundraising, you're good at calligraphy. That's olamo. I want to say one more thing about olamo, which is so important, which is that sometimes people have had difficult life circumstances, understandably try to run away from that. Why do I have a father who was like this? Why do I have a mother who was difficult? Why is my yichus not so great? We have to have emunah that our life circumstances are from the Ron Shalom. And when we run away from our circumstances, run away doesn't mean you have to be stuck in the negative situation, but understand that whole package is you today. And when you run away from you today, you're running away from the Ron Shalom. Because who made you that way? Lech la'umin shasa'ani. Because I'll say, go to the woman who created me. Go to the person who created me. Baruch Hashem created us. When He created us, He didn't just create our minds and our DNA. He created our whole life, right? So much hashkacha elyona, kol b'gzeirus elyon, everything's b'gzeirus and everything is this. The reason that we are the way we are today was a beautiful tapestry, which is called our life. But when we don't accept that part of olamo, my olam is, it's interesting, I was just reading about John Rockefeller. John Rockefeller's father was a bigamist. That means he had John Rockefeller's family, the most, was the richest man in the world in the 1910 or so, 1905. And his father had his family and another family, incredible. And one wasn't supposed to know about the other. And John Rockefeller, just wiped him out. And his mother's, when his mother died, he said she was a widow, even though she wasn't. She was officially married. But that was part of your life. He couldn't get rid of it for a long time. It was a craze in America to figure out who John Rockefeller's father really was. Eventually he figured it out. Right, someone put this together, that together. He had a different name. His name was Livingston, not Rockefeller. But he was really Rockefeller, and he was Livingston, etc. That was a big craze in America in the 1900s. Who was this? Who was Rockefeller Center? Who was Rockefeller's father? But Rockefeller had divorced that. No. That's part of you. That's part of you. That's olamo. That's all chavasa olamo. So a person has to understand. Now, let's put together what we said. What is my obligation in my world with these life circumstances? Right? I've known former addicts who feel so obligated to help other former addicts or help people become not addicts because I understand like no one else. Baruch Hashem, that's not an understanding I have. Right? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't this, and I don't drugs, I never did. So, but he does. That becomes your chova. Rav Wolbe used to say that people from Chutz La'aretz, they should stay in Eretz Yisrael till they're 30, and they go back to America, go back to Chutz La'aretz. I heard him say it many times out of his mouth. It was a known shita, because you're obligated as someone who understands people from Chutz La'aretz to them. So an Israeli is a mechuyev, and I'm not as mechuyev to the Israeli tzibur, because I can't. My Hebrew lo kol kach tova, v'adayin ze matzchik, v'adiktik sheli hu ala panim, v'yitzchuku alai kol yilidim shani daber itam be'ivrit. As ani pachom mechuyav them, v'vadai. But the Americans have a certain chiyuv. And in certain places, I don't have a chiyuv. In my yeshiva, I have a lot of chiyuvim. In my shul, I have a lot less chiyuvim in that way. But my chiyuvim in shul are different. Maybe my chiyuv in shul is just to be a regular guy, because that's all I am. Chovaso balamo. That's one part of it. But now you have to know where you're going with all that. A person could just be stuck in his chova and just be an obligation man. That's all you are. No, that's not going to do it. And now you have to know, where are you going? What's your mabat? Where am I headed in all this? Right? Now I want to see again, we see the word of amal and everything. I'm amal in everything I do in my life. I'm amal. I'm amal with feel. I'm amal to me this, etc. So the yisod, it has to be super clear to you. It has to be super understanding to you. Your obligation, your obligations in your world, and where you're headed with all this. The person doesn't know. The person has to be able to always answer the questions. What are my obligations? I wake up today. What are my obligations? In this situation, what are my obligations? This is my world. What are my obligations? And where am I going with all this? Why am I living with all these obligations? Is it just to be obligated? No, I'm getting somewhere. Now, let's stop there for a second. I think sometimes people don't realize that the Mesilas Yesharim answered the question. Hine, we're going to do that next section. Masha Arunu Chazal, there's a general answer. So I think this line has to be understood on two levels. This I got partially from Rav Wolbe and partially put it together for myself. Everything we said is true, and this is one whole long session, right? But now, and there's a specific answer to the question of Chavasel Abamo, Umatzar Shasim Abatom. But there's another more general question, and that's where we're going to general question and general answer. There's a specific chova b'olamo, but there's a general chova which we all share, and that's not specifically b'olamo. That's the chova we all share, and where we're all going, and that we'll be dealing with Bezrat Hashem in the next session.